Welcome in. I'm Adam Osland. This is a Clippers Talk Live. Uh, I think I did a show late last night. Yeah, Clippers Talk After Dark. That did happen. And we had your official post-game show on AM 570 LA Sports after the Clippers 112-104 victory over the Golden State Warriors as they swept the back-to-back first of the season. And your LA Clippers start off the year 2-1. Next game coming up Wednesday back at Intuit Dome against the Portland Trailblazers. Told you at the end of that Clippers Talk After Dark last night that this man was coming on because he texted me while I was doing it. I said, hey, we got a booking in real time. It is Justin Russo. He is the man. Of course, you follow his Substack. Where can they get to all your information, your news story, which I just got in my email? It is titled, quote, Lou saying hearts are in the right place as Dunn and the Clippers swarm the Warriors for a second win. Where can they get that?
JustinRusso.substack.com at flybynight, FLYBYKNITE. That's where I'm at. I'm tweeting. It's weird. On the road, for road games, I tweet more if I'm not in the arena, obviously, just because, there's more things to actually write about when you're watching it from afar. Whereas in the arena, I'm just kind of enamored with watching what's going on in front of me. So it's kind of weird where, road games, I tend to tweet more. Home games, I tend to just sit there and watch more. It's very weird. I don't know why that happens.
No, I get it. Home games can be a little bit overwhelming, especially at Intuit Dome now with the Halo board and everything. You get caught looking. 3 dozen said, what up, Clippers Talk? What up, 3 dozen? So let's start with the man of the weekend warrior, the man of the last 24 hours. Everybody's finally talking about him, Ivica Zubac. I've been screaming from the rooftops for years, Justin, that this guy needs more touches. There is an easier path to victory. It's playing through Ivica Zubac, and it is finally happening. Out of necessity, they figured out, hey, we're not winning right now if we don't get Ivica Zubac the ball, but he is more than delivered. I'm just so impressed and happy with Big Zoo, and I shouldn't even say impressed. I knew he was capable of this. I knew if you gave him the minutes, if you gave him the responsibility offensively, he would come through and give you the production. It's all happening now.
Yeah, I think when Norman Powell said the addition by subtraction, people took it as like a shot against PG, but we're actually seeing that. And Zoo is one of the main beneficiaries of just a guy like PG not being there. And like, that's not meant to be a slide against PG. It's just now there's more possessions, more of the ball to go around. And, one of the most efficient offensive sets the Clippers had last season was an Ivica Zubac post up or an Ivica Zubac pick and roll. And now we're seeing a lot more of that. And yeah, the Clippers offense is not the most efficient offense in the world to start. Obviously, we all know that. It's going to be, a little bit of a chore at times. But at the end of the day, if you got Ivica Zubac and you can throw the ball to him, you can go post hook over either shoulder, finish with either hand. He looks in great shape. I believe this is probably, I'm not going to say it's the slimmest he's been because that sounds like, like he hasn't taken his conditioning seriously before, but like he looks in great shape right now for them. And I honestly think the chemistry with him and James is probably the best it's ever been. And in fact, it is kind of funny to see that like some of the James turnovers through the first couple of games are them trying to just force feed the ball to Zoo, possibly even more than they should. But when you got a guy like Zoo who's averaging almost 23 and 14 through 3 games, why would you not try to get the ball to him as much as possible?
Yeah, and last night in their victory over Golden State, he ended up with not just 23 points, not just 18 boards, but 6 assists out there too, including one in the second quarter, which was a nice pocket pass through the defense to James Harden cutting through the rim for a left-handed dunk. A little bit of a, role reversal there between those two. It was great to see it. His passing has improved so much out of the short roll. And then you see that play late that everybody's talking about where Zoo looked off the defense, put it on the ground for a little in and out dribble for the dunk. Like his patience, his ability to slow things down. I think it was there last year too. He just didn't have the opportunity, but you can tell this guy puts in the work. He stayed ready. The opportunity is there. And the game is becoming really easy for him. And he is as skilled as it gets on that low block.
Yeah, I think we forget that for a lot of bigs, their prime doesn't come until, around 27, 28, 29. Like, I understand, like, we've been kind of blessed in the NBA with, like, these incredible bigs who almost seemingly come right in and are already dominating. But for a lot of them, they don't hit the peak of what they can do mentally, physically, athletically, reading the game wise until 27, 28. And we're there with Zoo. He's 27. He's been in the system now for 5 years under Ty. He's been with the team longer than anybody. When I asked him at a post game presser if he feels like he's kind of had to take on the leadership role because he has been here longer than anyone else, and he said, yeah, like he feels like a leader now. And I think that's kind of just like the byproduct of not just time, but with PG leaving, someone has to step up, and he's been the guy vocally, and he should be a leader with the fact that he's the backline defender, he's the anchor, he's the guy who sees everything defensively. That guy has to be vocal. I think we've seen a step with Zoo. We talk about, you mentioned his assists. I believe it's the second most, tied for the second most he's ever had in a game. His career high is 7. The in and out dribble, but with the look off going downhill, and that's great. But more to me, it just speaks that like there is a comfort level now with him where he is seeing things rather than pre-diagnosing. He's just reading what's happening right in front of him and going from there rather than committing before it really gets underway. Because I think in times past, Zoo has been, I guess, more like he kind of is like now he seems like a choose your own adventure book in a good way, where he's dictating it as it happens. Whereas in the past, it seemed very streamlined, seemed very by the numbers, paint by numbers, if you will, of, oh, I get the ball in the short roll, I'm passing it directly to the corner. Like that's the only read. Now he's making several reads. And last night, I think, was kind of the culmination of all of that.
Yeah, like the array of options for him are opening up in his vision right now. It's not just one read. It's not just one thing he can do. It's multiple ways he can hurt the defense. I like the way you put that. I put it like this a little bit earlier because people are talking about him for Most Improved Player Award, which, yes, he should be a front runner in. It's really early in the season. We're 3 games in. Let's not overreact too much. But my point would be, he should be in the running for player who took advantage of finally getting an opportunity award, because I don't think he had this big leap this summer where he did all this work and hung out with Akeem Olajuwon and became this different player. I think it's mostly about him just taking advantage of the minutes and the role on offense. And he was capable of this for some time. The guy almost had a 30-30 game. He's had so many of these moments where he has a big game, then they go away from him. He has a big quarter, then they go away from him. I have been pulling my hair out regarding this for years. I've called him the long lost Gasol brother going back to 2021. Like, he is that skilled. The left hand, I will say, over the last couple of years is even better now. But this is someone, I guess, your thoughts on Most Improved Player, Defensive Player of the Year. Can he be an all-star? And where do you think he ends up stats-wise? Because I felt like 18 and 11 was on the high end of where he could end up averaging this season. I think 15 and 10 has to be the standard. It at least has to be that. That's your baseline. Do you have to up that now because he's at about 23 and 14?
Well, I'd still say 15 and 10 probably might be like that is like what you would hope the floor would be.
Yeah.
18 and 11 is a good baseline of like, if he has a great, like, listen, if Zoo puts up 18 and 11 over the course of the season, you'll take that hand over fist at this point. Like, just because that is a massive uptick in not just scoring, but in responsibilities that come along with it, just because of what his gravity around the rim will allow the rest of the offense to do. It's kind of funny. Like you mentioned about how you would pull your hair out at times just because they weren't going to him as much as possible. But I also, like, I'm not trying to say this as a negative against PG. I really don't mean it that way. PG's there. You have to go through him. But without him there, I don't think the Clippers can afford for too long in too many stretches of games throughout a game to not give Zoo the ball. I think that they've now been forced and shoehorned into actually allowing him to do more. Whereas in the past, they didn't really, I'm not going to say they didn't have that luxury, but it's a lot harder to do that when you have 3 stars or you have 2 main stars who need the ball as much as they do. And, with no PG, Kawhi's still out, obviously, for the foreseeable future. We're kind of seeing Zoo get thrust into a larger role, basically by necessity. And the best thing that's happened is, necessity can bring innovation at times, where now we're seeing the ability that he has with this high level of workload. I mentioned it to someone the other night, like he played, I believe it was 39 minutes on the road in Denver at altitude on Saturday night. And even if you just wipe away what he did last night on the second night of it back-to-back, which you can't, but if you push him to the back burner, the 39 minutes that Zoo played were the most he's played, I believe, in a regulation, or the second or the third most minutes he's ever played in a regulation basketball game. So that means like no overtime or anything. The game that he played the most, I was actually at last year in Utah when he played, I believe, like 41 or 42 minutes in that win. So like you're slowly seeing this like matriculation of them believing more in Zoo, which is why I kind of think it's okay that their backup center situation looks like how it does as long as he stays healthy, and why it can be a good thing that at the moment they don't really have someone you would really look at as a backup center and say, well, that guy deserves to play, in certain settings over Zoo. This is actually good for Zoo because there is no one to really play over him unless you consider Nico as the backup five, which they have gone to quite a bit. But, in a long-winded way to now answer your question about most improved, I think he has a case. Obviously, it's very early in the season. Like, the season ebbs and flows. But what I will say about awards, and this is the biggest thing, especially like All-Star or Most Improved or anything like that,
Momentum.
the beginning of the season matters most. Like, I think people forget that a lot of narratives for voters, a lot of narratives for people who decide on All-Stars and Most Improved and things like that, Defensive Player of the Year, that's, I'm not going to say decided early in the season, but a heavy weight is created early in the season with those narratives, to where if someone sees Ivica Zubac doing this now, they might go away from the television for 1 or 2 months and still think he's doing that.
Yeah.
And that matters. Now, for the Clippers, if he continues to do this, yes, he's going to have a great case for pretty much anything he wants this year around the league. But for them, they just need him to be consistent on a nightly basis. They need him to stay out of foul trouble. They cannot afford him to get into foul trouble. That's the big thing. But I genuinely think that they have reached a comfort level with him that they've never had with him. And a byproduct of that is just because they have to. They're being forced to be comfortable with giving him the ball, and it's paying off in a massive way.
Yeah, and I take your point, of course. I brought it up, too. In past seasons, you have PG, you have Kawhi. Last year, you had technically 4 Hall of Famers. Russ certainly wasn't playing like one. But this is, to me, the reasoning I had with why you need to get to Zoo more, even with those guys, is because we always complained about not getting enough easy buckets on that Clippers team. Meanwhile, you had a guy in the low post who could go to work for you, and they really never explored that consistently enough to see what he could do. But people are bringing up how, he's never had a guy like James Harden, a true playmaker like this, getting him the basketball. I know, Russ fans, you're going to say, no, he had Russ, and Russ would throw him those fastballs from 5 feet away sometimes. But how much credit do you apply to James Harden and bringing this version of Ivica Zubac out?
Quite a bit, actually. I mean, I think some of this is just a natural linear progression that a player makes. It's like he was already a good player, but this is, a natural progression that a player like him can have. But you end up looking at, at James and what he's been able to do, with, granted, their on-off numbers together this year, it's still 3 games. It's 85 minutes. The team's minus 15. But, like, it gets a little wonky. Like, they haven't – the starting unit hasn't played well. But it's really only been for like 2 stretches of time the starting unit hasn't played well.
Yeah. You can have massive swings with this small of a sample size still.
Right. But what James has been able to do is, I think, leverage the playmaking gravity with the shot gravity of himself to then develop an area of the floor where Zoo can now catch about 8 to 10 feet at the dotted line and not just make decisions to pass, but, we've seen it, Adam, last year. He was basically the best floater game of any big man in the league last year. And him adding that has allowed him to, I guess, expand his range more than than what was thought. It's kind of funny because if you go back to the Doc Rivers year, 2019-20, when they ended up losing the bubble, I think Zoo, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I remember looking at this a while back. He actually made mid-range shots. And it wasn't like he was bad at them. And when I say mid-range shots, I mean like 14, 15 footers. He wasn't taking 20 footers, right at the top of the arc or anything. But like he had it. Like that was something that he could do. So I wonder if we do see a little bit of that, brought back out, especially because the Clippers do lack spacing at times. Like there are some spacing issues that, have kind of popped up and crept up through the first 3 games. But James has been a major boost for him. But I don't think that should take away from anything of what Zoo's been able to do. Like this is all him. At the end of the day, like this is still him. Like there's the play Saturday night in Denver where he just goes right through Nikola Jokic.
Oh.
Like that's not something you saw him do even last year all that often. And I think that's a little bit of a statement from Zoo that, and kind of a reassurance to himself that he can do that.
Even on the offensive foul he got on Draymond last night that was reviewed, I was fine with that. I don't think he had a foul in the game, and he went right at him and through him and showed the physicality. I'm okay with plays like that. If you're at fault or make a mistake because you're overly aggressive, that's something Coach Lou talks about all the time, that we can live with those type of mistakes. And Ivica Zubac certainly trucked Draymond Green there on that one. Okay, and going away from Ivica Zubac, which is not easy, but we do need to move along here. Norman Powell and the performance he had with 22 points in the fourth quarter on Saturday night, 37 against the Denver Nuggets. This is another guy who's getting this big opportunity, one he has wanted for some time since he left Portland, to get more opportunities on the offensive end, but the defense is still there. I mean, that block shot he had on Buddy Hield on that tremendous defensive possession where first it was Chris Dunn, I think, on Kuminga, locking him up. He kicked it out to the far side corner to Buddy Hield. Norman Powell blocks that. Then Chris Dunn saves it, gets it to DJJ. DJJ gets it to Zoo. I think Zoo gets it to Norman Powell on the other end. They called it a 2-pointer after review, I think it was, but it looked like a 3-pointer at first. Norman Powell is absolutely thriving too right now. He's showing everything that he can do. And to go back to your point about, addition by subtraction, he's living up to it so far.
Yeah, I know his numbers are a little bit boosted by what he did Saturday, the 37-point outburst in Denver. But it's kind of funny to look at Norman Powell through 3 games, averaging 24.7 points. That's more than PG averaged for an entire season with the Clippers. PG's high was 24.3. Now, do I think Norman Powell is a 25-point per game scorer every night? No. I think, it's going to ebb and, like I said with Zoo, it's going to ebb and flow throughout the season. It's just an interesting thing to note, kind of even early. But with Norm, you mentioned the defensive aspect of that block. Actually, that plays what my next article is about. I already have everything pulled up for it. So that's the one play that I'm writing about from that game. I wrote about a play from Saturday, which was Nico finding Kevin Porter Jr. on a slot cut for a dunk in, I believe, the end of the first quarter, I believe. So, like these little things that you just noticed throughout the game. But that play was obviously big. And I think Norm has actually greatly benefited from a lot of the roster construction now, not just because like he's getting more of an opportunity offensively, but because there's less of a defensive, I guess, like a negative with him defensively now, where he is not the key pressure point anymore for opponents trying to go at the Clippers, where like teams wouldn't really go at Kawhi. They wouldn't really go at PG a lot. They kind of really attack James and Norm, which they still try to do now. But with Derek and Chris there, they've kind of insulated a lot of everybody else, and especially with JVG's scheme, where they're so aggressive heavy on swiping at the ball on anyone who drives like that, like on that play, which I will get into detail in my article. Like the reason that play works on the defensive end is because Chris Dunn actually jumps up to swipe at the ball when Andrew Wiggins starts driving to the lane. And the reason he jumps up is because Pajemski actually comes to set a hammer screen against James Harden in the dunker spot to free up Kuminga in the corner. But when Dunn kind of ducks in to swipe at the ball, it saves everyone. And those are the types of plays that are saving everyone. It allows Norm to recover on the perimeter with Buddy Hield to where he's able to stay connected. He doesn't have to duck down even more himself and get lost on a shooter. Like everything's connected on that end. And Norm has been a big part of that as well. He hasn't been attacked as much defensively. Zoo, as we all know and love to say, is great defensively. And when you have guys who Ty calls his shutdown corners in, Chris Dunn and Derek Jones Jr., it makes everyone's life easier. Norm's been a beneficiary of that defensively, but also it's kept him fresh offensively. So where now you're noticing in the second half last night, like he's getting to the rim. He's pulling them from three. He's also more shot aggressive. I feel like the biggest thing with Norm is that last year, while he did get downhill and stuff, I won't say predominantly a catch and shoot 3-point player, but that's how he was used and seen at times. Now he's more off the dribble from three. He's almost in a way cut out a lot of the mid-range game, which is good. I don't like, I'm not a big like, oh, the mid-range needs to die person, but the Clippers in general have cut out the mid-range quite a bit. They basically halved it from where it was last year. And Norm getting downhill, more pull-up threes, that's good for him. And I've been greatly impressed with Norm, with his mindset. Like, he told reporters before they left for Denver on Friday that, like, I've been a starter before. This is not like a thing where I just like, oh, I'm a starter now, I got to figure this out. Like, he was a starter in Portland. This is nothing new for him. This might be who he is now. He's, like I said, he's going to average 25 a night. Not really. But also, if he gets to 20 a night, the Clippers are probably rolling, because last year, what he averaged, 13? So that's an extra 7 points with Zoo's uptick. Like, this is like we talked about a long time ago, Adam. Like, you can't get another Paul George, but you can recreate him in the aggregate. 7 extra points from Norman Powell, 7 extra points from Ivica Zubac, those matter. That's 14 right there. You just got to patchwork it together. And real quick with Chris Dunn and Derek Jones, like, I'm a Steelers fan, so I've kind of looked at this through like a Steelers prism, where I know Ty's called them like shutdown corners and stuff. Derek Jones reminds me of an old Steelers cornerback, and Mel Blount was an old-time Steelers cornerback from the 70s, where he's lanky, he's long, he's tough, he does the hard-nosed things. But then there's Chris Dunn, who I've likened more to like Troy Polamalu, who he's flying everywhere around the floor. He's seeing things no one else is. He's sticking his nose into positions he shouldn't be. He's deflecting and tipping away entry passes on bigger guys. Like, he did that at least once, maybe twice last night. It's actually remarkable to watch a guy at his size do what he can do. And, you know, look, we can sit here and talk till we're blue in the face about, you know, the Clippers are at a talent deficit, but they're not at an energy and a hustle deficit this year. And it's from those two guys specifically.
Yeah, you may be able to out-talent them, but you're not outworking them right now, especially with the way Chris Dunn is playing. The deflection he had near the end of the third quarter was turned into a turnover on Golden State. I think it ended up going off of Steph Curry as they were trying to get it to him in the near sideline. It was just a special play with him just attacking that passing lane and somehow breaking that up and then getting the turnover. The rebounding was also really good from Chris Dunn last night, I have to say. I was very impressed in that area. Look, he had 9 boards, and we can transition to talking about Terrence Mann here. I talked about it in the offseason. I said Chris Dunn's the better point of attack defender. I wouldn't be shocked if he got into the starting lineup and played the Pat Bev role back when Pat Bev was playing next to James Harden in Houston. I could definitely see that happening in the backcourt at some point. I do think the criticism of Terrence Mann is a little bit overblown, and I have a tweet with some video evidence of the game from yesterday and some of the stuff he was able to do and some of the turnovers he caused, but he doesn't get credit for. His defense on Steph Curry was actually really good, and he was on him primarily the first 8 minutes or so of the ball game. And then to start the third quarter, he and DJ were switching off a little bit more. But the Terrence Mann is doing nothing but running around and getting cardio right now, crew. Like, if you're just looking at the box score, it is not telling you the full story of what he's been able to do. Having said that, Chris Dunn was the better player yesterday. He deserved more minutes. He played 28. Terrence Mann played 18. And there is something, I think, to his level of confidence on the offensive end. When Terrence Mann missed that layup in transition, that just rarely ever happens. Rarely ever. He is a top 3 finisher in the restricted area the last 2 seasons from the guard position. He's been that good. What have you seen from Terrence Mann? What are your concerns? And is some of the criticism overblown in your mind?
I think yes and no. He's still not shot hungry, which I think is a problem. Like, it's hard to leave players out there who don't want to shoot. The difference between the reason Derek Jones can play so much right now is because he is shooting. And it's not even just the fact that he's making it, like, he's just shooting it. Terrence just isn't shooting threes, and that's a problem for the team. It kind of impacts a lot of spacing. You know, like you said, he missed the transition layup last night. Once that happens, I do think, you know, that kind of bleeds mentally into some level of confidence. Maybe, maybe not. But, like, you can't leave players out there who aren't At least if not shooting, at least being shooting threats. What I found interesting through the first 3 games in regard to Terrence Mann is he has not closed either of the first 3 games or any of the first 3 games.
Well, the first one, he fouled out at like the 2.5 minute mark.
Yeah.
His defense was really good in that game against Phoenix.
Right, it was. But I do find it interesting though that like over the last 2 nights, who do we see close? Amir Coffey. Because Amir, for as much as people might think, he's possibly not worthy of the role he has, and they want to see Jordan Miller, which is very understandable. Amir is very dependable. Amir is the type of guy who won't beat you. Like, he won't beat himself. He won't beat his own team. He will be in the right spots. He hustles. He's always in position for rebounds. He's scrappy. He's good in transition. They can go to him in the mid post if they need a basket. Like, I know it looks wonky, and I've actually talked to Amir about this quite a bit in recent days about his little wrong-footed turnaround pull-up jumper from like 15 feet. I said, it just looks weird when you keep jumping off the wrong foot. He goes, I know, it just goes in though. He goes, like, because he says it catches people off guard, that they have to jump across him because he is left-handed, and it could lead to fouls. So that part's actually rather interesting.
This is what I have to deal with in here, Justin.
You're
talking about Amir Coffey playing so well, and we get a guy saying also besides defense, Coffey is slacking. Like, no, he had a big first game where he was 4 of 4, 2 of 2 from the outside on the offensive end. Like, Amir's doing his thing. I agree with you. Just like Batum and Chris Dunn, he's rarely ever a negative, right?
Yeah, I kind of look at it. Amir is a trusted person who's put in years of hard work and basically bided his time to get to the spot that he's at now. Like, Amir's a no hassle guy. Like, I've talked with him throughout last season when he was getting DMP, and he basically said he'll do whatever it takes, that the coaching staff asks of him. Like, Amir is an easy guy to fit in around the team, where if, Wednesday night against Portland, if he doesn't play, Amir will be fine. And it's not the biggest deal in the world to him. Terrence has to figure it out. I don't think Terrence has been poor or bad. I think there's been areas where he hasn't been as good as he should be.
Yeah.
I think there's been areas he's been fine. Like, defensively, I think he's been fine. He needs to probably get a little bit better on the glass, but that could also be a minutes issue or opportunities. Maybe the ball doesn't bounce your way on that certain night. But for Terrence to get where he needs to go, he needs to shoot more. That's number one. Derek doesn't have that problem. Amir doesn't have that problem. Chris Dunn, who has historically not been a great three-point shooter, but has been the last 2 years on about 150 attempts, he doesn't have that problem getting them up. We know Kevin Porter Jr. doesn't have a problem getting shots up. So Terrence has to actually match that. Like, they have to get shots up. Like, their offense needs it. And Terrence has been a good three-point shooter for several years. He needs to trust it. And at this point, he's not. And I wish, and I know he hits them at a solid clip, I wish he would kind of deter himself from those long two-pointers to actually kind of bringing the ball either at the rim or more threes. I do know that, like, one of his shots last night was a late in the clock shot, so like that happens. But Terrence does have to pick it up offensively, but I don't think he's been a detriment, to be fair, on what they've been able to do.
And this guy, Triple J, going after Amir Coffey, who was 3 of 5 last night, 1 of 1 from 3, talking about those spinning 360 fadeaways are not sustainable. Well, I don't know. He's been doing it for a couple of years now, and it feels like they go in 55% of the time or something. His offense is
unorthodox.
Sometimes, yeah, unorthodox and a bonus.
It's very unorthodox, and I think that's what is weird for people, and that's why it doesn't look sustainable. But it has been. It was last year. It was the year before.
Thank you.
Like last year, inside 8 feet, he shot 63%. 8 to 16 feet, he was 53%, which is kind of where he's ended up taking a lot of those little weird turnarounds that he's not a good long two shooter, but a lot of guys in the league aren't. But Amir, I think Amir's value is he can play 4 positions. He competes defensively. He hustles. He gets out in transition, and he will shoot threes. Ty's biggest kind of bugaboo as far as a coach in terms of how he views players is whether or not they do shoot. It's totally fine if guys shoot and miss. It's not fine if guys don't shoot. And they ran into that problem with Luke Kennard at times where he just wasn't shooting enough. They've run into it with Terrence Mann, which is why you've said, or why you've seen him actually kind of get benched towards the end of some of these games.
Yeah, I don't know what people are watching with Amir Coffey. That weird fadeaway has been going in for years. As you mentioned, he's a killer in transition. He rarely misses shots there. He's really good getting downhill like a locomotive. He's tough there, and obviously his defense is there. And his three-point shooting, he shot 38% from three last season, and he's off to a good start again. So, Triple J, I mean, I guess, yeah, you're kind of agreeing with us now. You don't want to disagree too much. Let's talk about Kevin Porter Jr. here because you brought him up. But I feel like there was some progress last night. And while some people are going to hate on him and say, what are you talking about? I'll just bring up specific plays. Like, I watch everything. Right elbow fade is his shot. That right elbow jumper is where he's comfortable, and he hit that at the 2:45 mark of the first. Then he got fouled at the end of the first quarter going to the basket. He should have got that shot to go, that little scoop layup, and he was mad at himself afterwards, but he knocked down both free throws. He had a couple of steals. One, he got up to Batum. He drew an offensive foul. He banked in a three-pointer, and he played more within himself. He wasn't getting as much tunnel vision of I have to take the shot on this possession. I thought that was very clear from KPJ last night, which I'm hoping means the game's slowing down and a year off from the NBA, it's going to look fast when you get back out there on the court, and maybe it's starting to come around for him.
Yeah, last night of the 3 games that he's played in the regular season, that was the best game he's played. And I know it sounds funny because people are going to look at his stat sheet and say, well, he was 2 for 7. And yeah, some of the shots are not great decisions, but at the end of the day, I think he was fine. I don't think he was bad, which I thought the first 2 games, I actually thought he was pretty poor to the point where, yes, it's early in the season, but you do wonder how much, I guess, mental struggle that can do to a player who is struggling as much as he was. His shot does look different. I don't know why. I went back and looked at footage of his last year in Houston before, he missed all of last season. Like, his shot changed. It's not like a very large change. It's very subtle. It's very weird. He seems like the ball is further away from him as he goes to shoot. Like, his arms look too rigid, and it's more of a flick of the wrist, and it's very strange. So maybe it's just one of those things where it takes time. It takes NBA minutes for him to get the shot back down. But I do think there are promising things. I think his actual playmaking reads have been good. I think that's something that
people aren't talking about that. Like, guys have missed shots where he would have gotten an assist. And so people don't realize, wow, he had this nice spinning kick out to Amir Coffey against Denver in the first half, who missed a near side corner 3. That was a great read, but he doesn't get any credit for that.
Right. Like, you oftentimes hear like the phrase like process over results, right? Like, with KPJ, I think it is a process. The results aren't there right now as much as he would like or the team would probably like, but the process is getting better. I think he is figuring it out. It's going to take some time. Like, we have to remember, he wasn't in the NBA last year. He played in Greece for only 5 or 6 games. So you're talking about like actual competitive basketball. The guy's played 6 games in like 18 months. Like, that's not anything to write home about, and he's going to have to end up figuring it out. So I think there is some positivity to take out of last game. I'm actually rather interested. I think the actual intriguing part, like, I know fans don't like 3-guard lineups, right? Like, they've been like this taboo thing. They're tired of seeing Ty go to it. But the Clippers need offense, and 3-guard lineups are probably the fastest way for them to get there. What I have noticed through the first 3 games is he will put out James, Chris, and Kevin all together. And that's 3 ball handlers who can make solid decisions as passers. And 2 of them historically have been above average shooters in James and Kevin. And the other one has had a good run of success in the last couple of years as a shooter, which is Chris. So that might be a way to unlock Kevin, because you can get Chris to guard 3s, Kevin to guard 2s, and kind of just, allow Kevin to find his footing in a lineup where he doesn't have to do everything.
No, that's a great point. And the lineup that's really been working is the one to start second and fourth quarters, where it's KPJ, it's Amir, Chris Dunn, Batum, and Ivica Zubac. They have done work the last 2 games to start the second yesterday and to start that fourth quarter. They opened up the lead even further. That is very promising. That is very encouraging. What has worked so well in those lineups from what you've seen?
Well, I think Nico deserves a lot of credit. Like, you're going to end up looking at Nico's stat line every night and be like, what did he do? Right? Like, what did he, and then you watch the game and you see it. It's very funny. Like, there was an old adage. I forgot the soccer manager who said it, but it was like Sergio Busquets was a famous soccer player for Barcelona, was a defensive midfielder for Barcelona for many, many years. He's now, I believe, at Inter Miami in the MLS. He's like 38 years old or whatever. The saying was, you could watch the game and not see Sergio Busquets, but you could watch Sergio Busquets and see the game. And with Nico Batum, I feel like that's where he is you watch Nico, you could actually see the entire game, but if you watch the game, you're not seeing him because he's doing everything else, from ball denials to tapping the ball on rebounds to hustling over screens to switching at the right time to denying entry passes to making connector passes from the slot or above the arc or anything like that. So, like, those are the level of things that Nico can do, and I think he's unlocked that lineup quite a bit. You know, you look at Dunn and KPJ together. That's a great point of attack defender in Chris Dunn. That's a good defender in Amir. That's a good defender in Nico. That's a good defender in Zoo. KPJ, even if you say he's an average defender, that's one non-good defender in a lineup. And, you know, I tweeted out, I think it was Saturday, the Clippers' second lineup is just going to have to live by what I termed as crashing glass and hauling ass. Like, they're gonna have to, like, crash every offensive rebound, and that's what they're doing. They're crashing the offensive glass, and they're getting out in transition and running when they get stops. That's the quickest thing. Against the set defense, they have not looked great, but in transition, they've looked so good that it's buoyed them to having nights like last night where they were plus 10 in 6.5 minutes together. Like, it all works together. I also think, in an interesting way, bringing Nico back has helped a guy like Zoo, because there's someone else in that second unit when they start second quarters who knows him and how to get him the ball. In an article I posted the other day about the one play I liked against Denver, I posted a video at the very end about an assist Nico got to Zoo where he rifles a pass in away from a defender in the low block to Zoo on a one-touch pass from the corner. Like, those are the types of things that Nico can do. And I think he's unlocked all this stuff in the second unit. But I also have to give credit to Ty. Ty said throughout training camp, the one thing he was going to do was pull Zoo early in first quarters to get him back with the second unit to start the second quarter. He's done that, and it's paid off in a massive way. So as long as, like, when Kai Jones comes in, because he's played, I believe, first quarter minutes the last couple nights, and then they've kind of gone away from him since then. As long as Kai can kind of do what he does and that lineup's not a detriment, I kind of think might be what we see going forward, is Zoo start second quarters, because they need it. They need to rely on that.
Yeah, and I don't think Coach Lue has gotten enough credit so far through these first three games where they easily could be 3-0 if they didn't let go of a 9-point lead with 3:52 left against Phoenix. He has been really, really sharp with his rotations and lineups, and to your point, doing what he said he was going to do with the Ivica Zubac. And that in the past, you know, it's wavered. They have talked about making an emphasis on getting it to Ivica Zubac. We're going to get him more involved. And it happens for a quarter or a game, and then they go away from him. But lastly, I want to talk about something that you texted me about last night. And this was the impetus of you coming on today. I was like, oh, Justin's already texting me here. Might as well see if he can come on Clippers Talk. But it's a discussion we've had about the standings, and standings watch is in effect because the Clippers have a chance to hold on to their first-round pick should OKC choose to swap with Houston instead. What is the current situation? Because I know it's complicated and the verbiage has to be on point, or we can both get confused at times, but just try to lay this out for everyone to understand.
So for people who don't know, Adam actually had to call me a couple of days ago to get, like, clarification on this, just because it is a little bit complicated, but I'll try to simplify it as best as I can. Oklahoma City has the right to swap first round picks with the Clippers this year. It's completely unprotected. It's a result of the Paul George trade. They get the right to just swap. Oklahoma City will take the better of their pick and the Clippers pick. That's just the simplest way to put it. Right now, as things stand, the better pick for OKC to take is the Clippers pick. If you go to Tankathon, the Clippers pick would be 25th. OKC's would be 29. So, of course, OKC would take 25 over 29. But OKC also has the right to swap with Houston. It's part of a trade that happened a while back. I believe it was the Westbrook trade, with the Westbrook Chris Paul trade, maybe. I could be wrong on that. It might be a byproduct of that. But that pick from Houston is top 10 protected. That's where like the wrinkle gets thrown in. If Houston finishes anywhere from, let's say, 11 to 30, okay, just to make it easy, between 11 to 30 in the lottery, not in like the Western Conference standings or anything, just in the lottery, 11 to 30.
Okay.
If the Clippers finish behind them, so 12 and below, if they're one spot behind Houston, Oklahoma City would take Houston's
better.
pick.
Can we use better?
Okay, yeah,
behind
that's where we ran into the problem, right? It was behind.
Yes.
Okay. If Houston's pick is better than the Clippers pick and not in the top 10, Oklahoma City is taking that Houston pick. Right. Simple as that. And the Clippers would keep theirs. Simplest way to explain it is that.
Yes.
So there is a scenario in this universe that we live in where the Clippers theoretically could get a lottery pick this coming season in the draft if everything pick wise goes to plan. Because Houston could finish 11th in the lottery, the Clippers could finish 12th, the Clippers would have the 12th pick. Simple as that.
So
it is very confusing. I know. The more I say it, I see how it gets very confusing.
Is there a scenario where the Clippers finish ahead of the Rockets in the standings and OKC still takes the Clippers pick instead of the Rockets?
When you say ahead in the standings, you mean like Clippers finish, let's say, 6th in the West?
Clippers finish, or 8th, and 9th is Houston.
It would depend on where Houston is.
Balls?
It would depend on the ping pong balls and where Houston is in the lottery. Because if Houston ends up with a top 10 pick, they keep that pick. That's what happens.
Yeah, so it could happen that way if the ping pong balls don't fall the Clippers' way, but the odds are still better that OKC would end up taking it from Houston as long as they finish behind the Clippers, but not so far behind that they end up with that top 10 protected lottery pick and they end up getting that. But you're saying right now it would be OKC taking the Clippers pick?
Correct, because Houston's pick as of right now would be the 9th overall pick. They can't take that. It's top 10 protected.
Yeah, because they're 1 and 2.
Yeah.
I see.
So, yeah, it's
See, that's what I've always been saying. Like, you want Houston to be worse than the Clippers, but not so bad that they end up with a top 10 pick.
Right. Like, it's, as I described on Twitter months ago, you're trying to thread a very fine needle. And I understand, like, talking about it 3 games into the season, like, not really worth it. But at the end of the day, like, it is something to watch. Like, if you're a Clippers fan and you're worried about the Clippers pick, just keep an eye on Houston results. That's the simplest way. Houston loss is good. Houston wins sometimes maybe okay. Like at the just based on pick protection. So, yeah.
Okay. I'm glad we clarified.
What I will say is because of the state of the NBA right now, it is going to be a close watch throughout the rest of the season. Detroit's not good. Detroit's playing better, obviously, than they were last year, but they're not good. They're 0-3. The Wizards aren't going to be good. The Jazz aren't going to be good. Charlotte most likely is going to struggle. Brooklyn's not going to be good, even though somehow they beat Milwaukee by almost – they were up 20 on Milwaukee late in that game. That was weird last night. Portland's not going to be good. And then, there's probably Chicago, Toronto. Like, you're going to get to a point where, like, late in the season, you're probably going to see something like Houston – possibly, if things don't go well for them, around the 9th spot in the lottery with like a couple weeks to go. And you're going to have to sit there wondering, are they going to get enough wins to push them, out of this top 10? So that would be something to watch. It's going to be very interesting to see from a lottery perspective how this plays out. Now, am I worried about that on October 28th? No. But you get me to November 28th, I might actually start watching a little bit more.
It's a fun subplot to this season where you're fighting with one team all season long in the standings for not just to be ahead of them when it comes to playoff positioning, but also when it comes to a lottery pick, or not a lottery pick, but a pick swap from OKC.
And they do play each other
4 times.
They do play each other 4 times this year. And actually, The most important one's going to be April 9th. They play each other April 9th in LA. It's the third to last game of the season for the Clippers. It's their last home game, actually, of the season. That game might be massively important for whatever we're talking about.
Guys, you're crazy if you think the Clippers don't care about holding on to a first-round pick when they've hardly had any. Come on now. Of course
They care. They care. But as I have had a person within the organization tell me over the last few years, tanking is not something they're into.
No.
They're like, so they do care about their pick. They want to keep a pick. They want the best pick possible. It's not something they don't want, but they also want to win. It's the nature.
But all tanking would do is have OKC take a better pick from the Clippers, so that wouldn't help them. So they got to win now. They got to stay ahead of Houston, and Houston can't be so bad that their top 10 protected pick falls in that area where OKC wouldn't be able to take it and therefore takes the Clippers pick. He is Justin Russo at FlyByNite. KNITE is where you find him on X. Join his Substack. You get great coverage there of the Clippers all season long. He's doing special stuff, film breakdowns, as well as we heard earlier. Justin, I appreciate you coming on Clippers Talk once again and for putting our minds at ease when it comes to the pick situation between them and the Houston Rockets.
Hey, man, try to get some sleep. I know you're doing like 6 of these a day. Do you sleep? I talked to Chuck and Will the other day at the arena. They're worried about you because you're just like doing stuff every 12 hours, man.
Yeah, well, so far so good. I just drink a lot of caffeine, a lot of diet soda, and I'm powering through. No, I get enough sleep. It's all good. Working out, eating clean, getting enough sleep, talking enough Clippers. I mean, that's good for my mental health too. Just talking about this team right now since they're 2-1 and playing pretty well. So I appreciate the concern, everyone, and I can understand the concern, believe me. This has been another edition of Clippers Talk. Make sure to show Justin Russo some love and give him a follow if you haven't, and subscribe to his Substack for great Clippers content. Until later tonight, where we got a Clips and Dip, speaking of, with Chuck Mockler and Will Updike,